On the morning of August 22nd, at precisely 7 o'clock hours, a routine radio check went unanswered. But what no one realized at the time was that the truth was already right in front of them. These cases would remain unsolved for decades, not because of a lack of evidence, but because of one detail everyone overlooked. The forests, it seemed, were not just keeping secrets, they were watching back. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what went wrong, and why the sheer isolation of these places can rewrite human behavior. This is Behind the Crime Files, where we explore the stories, psychology, and motives behind real crimes. Mark Mays lived in a 14 by 14-foot square. For 5 months every year, his home was a fire lookout tower perched on Saddle Mountain in the vast, lonely stretches of the Helena National Forest, Montana. His world was one of profound and absolute silence, broken only by the wind, the call of birds, and the crackle of his radio. His job was to watch, to be the unblinking eye over a sea of green. By all accounts, life was ordinary, predictable, safe. He was a man of routine, trusted, and content in his solitude. No one expected that late summer to be different. The timeline is precise, which makes what follows so difficult to process. On August 21st, Mark held his last two-way conversation with his district ranger. He reported nothing out of the ordinary. The next morning, at 7 o'clock, the ranger called for the mandatory check-in. The radio signal was strong, but the only reply was empty air. The ranger tried again at 7:15. Then 7:30. A low, formless worry began to take shape. At first, it didn't seem alarming. Radios failed. Batteries died. Lookouts sometimes hiked down for a break. But by midday, with still no contact, protocol escalated. A ground crew was dispatched. The journey to a remote lookout is not a quick one. It involves hours on rugged logging roads followed by a steep hike. They reached the tower in the late afternoon. The door to the cab was unlocked. This was the first detail that didn't sit right. Mark was known to be fastidious, a man who kept his world in order. Inside, everything was meticulously normal, yet profoundly wrong. His wallet lay on the small table, cash inside. His keys were on a hook. His prized rifle leaned in its usual corner. A pot of cold coffee sat on the stove. His logbook was open, the last entry noting a small lightning storm on a distant ridge 2 days prior. Nothing was disturbed. There was no sign of a struggle. But there was a second, more chilling detail that had been initially dismissed. The previous day, a 911 call had pinged off the cell tower that serviced Saddle Mountain. The dispatcher answered to the sound of heavy, rhythmic breathing. She repeated, "911, what is your emergency?" The breathing continued for nearly 20 seconds. Slow, measured, intentional, before the line went dead. It was logged as a probable pocket dial, a glitch in the vast system. Later, this sound would become impossible to ignore. Criminal psychologists who later reviewed the tape noted something critical. This was not the gasping, erratic breathing of someone in acute distress or fear. The rhythm was too even. The inhalations and exhalations were controlled. This suggested the caller was listening intently to the dispatcher's voice, understanding they were now connected to the outside world, and choosing to remain silent. This wasn't panic. It was control. A person monitoring a connection, or perhaps ensuring the line was functional before severing it. The act served a purpose only they understood. The search for Mark Mays began immediately. Dogs, helicopters, hundreds of volunteers on foot. They found nothing. Not a footprint leading away from the tower. Not a scrap of clothing. Not a single clue. It was as if he had stepped out onto the tower's catwalk and been lifted into the sky. But the most disturbing part was still to come. Investigators, faced with an impossible vacuum, focused on constructing a narrative. Their attention turned to a friend of Mark's, a man he had a known disagreement with over a loan. On paper, it made sense. A motive, however thin, but something didn't add up. This friend had a verifiable alibi, confirmed by multiple witnesses and receipts, placing him over 200 miles away at the time of the missed check-in. The theory collapsed. The investigation, lacking any other direction, slowly ground to a halt. The official file remained open, but active efforts ceased. Mark Mays was another sad, mysterious entry in the ledger of missing persons. 2 years pass. The memory of Mark Mays haunts the community of seasonal lookouts, a cautionary tale whispered in towers across the West. One of those listening was 63-year-old John Jack O'Neill. A seasoned lookout with over 20 years of experience, Jack was stationed at the Devil's Head Lookout in the Pike National Forest, Colorado. He was a man who knew the mountains like the lines on his own hands, respected for his caution and deep knowledge. He represented the old guard, unshakable and wise to the ways of the wilderness. On September 12th, Jack failed to make his scheduled afternoon radio check. His district manager, acutely aware of the Mays case, felt an immediate cold apprehension. He waited 30 minutes, then initiated emergency protocols. A helicopter was scrambled, reaching the isolated tower just before dusk. The scene was a mirror. The helicopter crew could see the lookout door standing wide open, swinging gently in the mountain wind. An unthinkable breach of basic protocol for a man like Jack, who would never invite animals or the elements inside. The pilot landed on the small helipad. Inside the cab, they found Jack's reading glasses folded on his logbook. A half-eaten sandwich was on a plate. His emergency pack, always ready by the door, was untouched. And on the small counter, his personal locator beacon, a device designed to be activated with a single press in an emergency, sat silent and unused. But there was another detail. Jack's powerful spotting scope, usually fixed on the distant horizons, was pointed downward. It was angled toward the base of the tower, at a dense thicket of trees just beyond the clearing. Behavioral analysts examined this configuration. A lookout scope is their primary tool, their reason for being there. To pivot it from the vast distance to the immediate, obscure terrain below indicated a drastic shift in attention. Something in that thicket had drawn Jack's focused observation. The placement of his glasses suggests he may have been writing in his log when he was interrupted. The uneaten food implies the interruption was immediate and compelling. His actions show a progression from routine to alert observation to a nothing. There was no sign he attempted to use the radio or the beacon after this point. Whatever happened, it occurred between one moment and the next, freezing his routine in time. Everything changed with this second disappearance. One vanishing could be a tragic anomaly, a fall, a sudden medical event, an animal attack. Two, in near-identical circumstances, shattered that notion. This single detail reframed the entire Mays case. Investigators from different states began to talk. A pattern was emerging, and it pointed not to accident but to design. A joint task force was formed. They re-examined every piece of evidence from both scenes. They combed through missing persons reports for other lookouts or remote forest workers. And they waited. The person responsible, they reasoned, would be watching. They would know the investigation had linked the cases. They might make a move. For 8 months, there was only silence. Then, on a rainy morning in May, a plain brown envelope with no return address arrived at the ranger station in Montana, addressed only to the investigator. What was inside would change the entire investigation and introduce a new level of calculation. The envelope contained a single sheet of unlined paper. On it was a hand-drawn map. The lines were precise, the topography marked with an expert's understanding of contour and feature. It depicted a remote, nameless canyon in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, over 150 miles from Saddle Mountain. In one corner of the canyon, a small X was marked. Below it, written in neat, block letters, were 3 words: "He is waiting here." The map was sent for forensic analysis. The paper was common, sold nationwide. The ink was from a standard ballpoint pen. But the author had been careful. No fingerprints, no DNA on the stamp or envelope. The handwriting analysis was inconclusive but suggested someone practiced in technical drawing. The postmark was from Spokane, Washington. The psychology of the letter was dissected. The phrasing is imperative and devoid of emotion. "He is waiting here," not "I found him," or "I'm sorry." It assumes the reader is seeking, and the author has superior knowledge. The word "waiting" is particularly telling. It implies a state of permanence, of patience. It objectifies the victim. This was not a confession fueled by guilt. It was a transmission of data. Experts believed the sender was likely male, organized, and felt a sense of intellectual superiority over the investigators. This was a person inserting themselves into the narrative to guide it, to demonstrate their knowledge and control, without exposing their identity. It was a game. A massive search was launched in the canyon indicated on the map. The terrain was brutal, a jumble of deadfall and sheer rock faces. On the 7th day, a searcher spotted a flash of color that didn't belong. A faded red plaid shirt, caught on a jagged limb 10 feet down a rocky crevice. Below, partially buried by years of sediment and pine needles, were human remains. Dental records confirmed it was Mark Mays. The truth, as it emerged, was far more calculated than anyone had expected. Mark had been transported a staggering distance after his disappearance. The location of his body was not a random dumping ground. It was a specific, difficult-to-reach place known only to someone with intimate backcountry knowledge. The condition of the remains and the scene offered few additional clues. No cause of death could be determined, but the message was clear. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned, executed, and then, years later, deliberately revealed. The 911 call from Mark's area was reclassified. It was now believed to be the killer, testing the cell signal from his location, perhaps even listening to the dispatcher's voice to gauge response times. He was learning his environment, understanding the systems he would work against. The discovery of Mays's body and the haunting map sent a shockwave through the Forestry Service. Lookouts were paired up, given satellite phones, and check-ins were increased. The sense of safety in isolation was gone. Yet, the vastness of the wilderness cannot be fully tamed by protocol. In 2003, a third case emerged from the shadows of the first two. This one offered a fleeting, spectral glimpse of the mechanism behind the horror. A young woman named Sarah, we are using a pseudonym at the request of her family, was working her first season at a historic lookout in the Gila National Forest, New Mexico. She was enthusiastic but nervous, acutely aware of the previous stories. She made her check-ins faithfully. On July 17th, during her evening call, she mentioned an odd detail to her supervisor. She said a hiker had visited her tower that afternoon. A man, polite, asking about the history of the lookout. He had stayed for about 20 minutes, asked thoughtful questions, and then left down the trail. She thought nothing more of it. The next day, she failed her morning check-in. This time, response was immediate and frantic. A helicopter was there within 2 hours. The lookout was empty. Sarah was gone. But she was not the only one. The helicopter pilot, circling the area, spotted a vehicle. A dusty, older model truck was parked at a remote trailhead 5 miles from the lookout, a trailhead that was rarely used. He reported it. Ground units converged. The truck was registered to a man named Arthur K. Brandon, a former surveyor who had been dismissed from his job years prior for unstable behavior. He was an avid outdoorsman, known to spend weeks alone in the wilderness. He was also a man with no fixed address. An APB was issued. 2 days later, a highway patrol officer in Arizona pulled over a speeding car. The driver was Arthur Brandon. In the passenger seat, showing signs of dehydration and shock but physically unharmed, was Sarah. Brandon's interrogation and the subsequent investigation pieced together a profile. He was not a raving lunatic. He was quiet, articulate, and possessed a deep, resentful fascination with the Forest Service and its lookouts. He saw them as false sentinels, city people pretending to own a view that belonged to everyone. His behavior, psychologists noted, was rooted in a profound need for control and a warped sense of reclaiming territory. He did not necessarily want to kill. He wanted to remove, to prove he could extract these watchers from their posts without a trace, to assert his dominance over both the person and the system that employed them. His visit to Sarah's tower was a casing. He was assessing her routines, her level of awareness. His mistake was taking a victim who was already on high alert due to the legacy of the previous crimes and operating in an era of heightened protocol. Brandon was charged with Sarah's abduction. Under questioning, he was asked about Mark Mays and Jack O'Neill. He smiled. He said he admired the craftsmanship of those disappearances. He called them clean. He offered no confession, only a chilling appreciation. He had no verifiable alibi for the times of the earlier vanishings, but no physical evidence could place him definitively at those scenes. He knew the forests too well. Sarah's case was the only one that could be prosecuted. Arthur Brandon was convicted of kidnapping and is currently serving a life sentence. The Mays and O'Neill cases remain officially open. Investigators are convinced Brandon was responsible, but without a confession or physical evidence, they cannot be closed. Jack O'Neill's body has never been found. The aftermath of these cases is a permanent scar on the community. The job of a fire lookout, once a romanticized pursuit of solitude and purpose, now carries an unspoken weight. Every unexpected sound on the catwalk, every stray hiker on the trail, is viewed through a lens of latent fear. Families of the missing are left in a torturous limbo. For Sarah, who survived, the vast, beautiful silence of the mountains is now filled with a different kind of noise, the echo of a terrifying choice that was made for her. The forests themselves feel different. They are no longer just places of beauty or danger from natural causes. They are a canvas upon which a human predator operated with eerie patience and skill. The lookouts were chosen not despite their isolation, but because of it. Their towers were not sanctuaries. They were glass boxes, displaying their occupants to anyone watching from the trees below. The psychology here is complex. Do you believe Arthur Brandon was driven by a specific hatred for the Forest Service as an institution? Or was the act of taking someone from an impossible place the primary goal in itself? What does the act of sending the map years later reveal about his motivations? And what do you think investigators missed in the crucial early hours of the first disappearance? If you are interested in the psychology and the stories behind real crimes and the way isolation can reshape human intention, subscribe to Behind the Crime Files. We delve into the evidence, the profiles, and the lingering questions that define these mysteries.